Africa's young people between the ages of 15 to 24 represent just over 20% of the continent's population, but 40% of that number are unemployed. This is where technical and vocational education and training, or TVET, comes in. TVET has an important role to play in promoting the integration of these young people into the labor market and in also helping the continent combat its high levels of poverty. Improving the match between vocational training offers and employer demand is a major challenge across the continent. In a context where the informal economy is prevalent and the labor market is highly volatile, the mismatch between available skills and the needs of the economy is an obstacle for employment and growth. This employability issue is even more important as the continent will see at least 100 million young people entering the labor market by 2030 due to the demographic boom. This week on the Career Hub, powered by the Africa Talent Company, we're looking at unlocking the potential of TVET in Africa. My guest is Ahmed, Alaga, Program Manager, Partnerships for Jobberman, Nigeria. Ahmed, welcome to Business Edge. Thank you for joining me.
Good morning.
So I know for some people, this might be the first time they're hearing of TVET, what basically is technical and vocational education and training. So instead of that education or sort of the abbreviation that just gives you the name, really break it down for us. What is really TVET?
Before I break it down as well, some people have heard of it, and there is some misconception as well that it's some sort of education for dullards or educationally disadvantaged people, and I think that that's a very huge misconception. So when we break down TVET, TVET basically means technical vocational education training. And it's a form of education that basically advocates for the development of how some people will say it, the head, which is not basically around knowledge. And then training of the hand, which is around dexterity, and finally the enrichment of the heart. And so TVET basically comprises of education, training, and skills development relating to some sort of wide range of vocational fields around production, services, and livelihoods. And I think one of the most important goals of TVET is to basically prepare young people for work. And to achieve this, TVET aims to just focus on the study of the mastery of specific techniques and the scientific concepts behind those techniques, as well as general skills. And one part that I think most people leave out in the conversation is the acquisition of certain trade values or personal values. And these processes can be delivered via formal, non-formal, and informal learning methods. In both a school-based structure as well as, a work-based learning environment. Yeah. And that basically just, spells out what, TVET is.
So in terms of TVET and education and, of course, the labor markets, when we look at the numbers, it's very obvious that there seems to be a big gap between what the market wants, what employers are looking for, and what young people are able to offer. And I know at Jobberman, you guys are able to see that very clearly. I've done some conversations, and employers complain about the skills that young people are bringing to the jobs and to the positions that are available. So tell us, what is the market looking for? And unfortunately, where is the gap for the millions of young people? It's not just in Nigeria, it's happening across the continent.
Yeah, at Jobberman, we see that a lot, and that's because we are the largest online job market for talents. We often see this mismatch, and that's because a lot of times employers come back to us and saying that there is a gap, there is some defect in the talent, and in terms of delivery of what they were expected to do. I think the major gap is around, we could look at a couple of factors. One is our educational system, which is a huge chunk of that problem, where, as development happens, companies and businesses are, improving processes and structures our educational system isn't moving at a pace to catch up with the developmental changes required by the businesses and solutions in the environment. Our curriculum in most cases are still very little bit backward. There's a lot of arguments around that area that it's not the curriculum that is delivery, but the point remains that young people come out of school not being able to meet the requirements businesses and entrepreneurs and society requires. And because we've moved away from the certificate galore, where your certificate gets you the job, employers are no longer looking for somebody with a 2-1 anymore in most cases. In most organizations, they've actually scrapped that requirement.
Good.
It is your skills and your competencies that get you into the door. Well, which is why for us at Jobberman, in our own contribution in providing solutions to some of these issues, we, since 2020, have actually provided soft skills and employability training to roughly over 700,000 young Nigerians between the ages of 18 and 35. Because you'll find out that for most businesses, their major concern are this tiny 21st century skills and employability skills, as little as critical thinking, communication skills, technological literacy. That just sets the difference. And it makes a huge mark because companies now have to retrain people when they come into the organization. And because of the economy and things are a bit difficult, companies are looking for young people who already meet that criteria.
Yes.
And would, make less mistakes and be able to move forward quickly at work. And so these skills and competences are the things that employees are looking for to have with their talents. And anybody who's not within that criteria, falls off the mark for the requirements to take in such role. So closing that gap would be people who actually have those skills or young people who have prepared themselves for the 21st century.
So that gap exists there, and we see it very clearly, and we know the consequences of it both for the economy and the market, as well as the young people who you said sort of basically fall through the gaps and then find themselves on the outskirts. But beyond that now, so let's bring TVET into this technical, vocational, and education training. How can it then address the issues we're seeing in terms of what is being demanded by the markets and employers and what is in supply by the young workforce of Africans?
Yeah, TVET plays a major role. If you look at the design behind TVET, it is an essential driver to the growth and the development of, especially the African continent. I think basically because the acquisition of employment skills as a key driver for economic development and its growth is now a well-acknowledged fact that TVET provides. And in addition, if you really look at it, among many other factors, it is said that the availability of a skilled workforce is a major pull for the attraction of foreign investments, right? So the more highly skilled your workforce is, the more attraction of investment you get from people. Because if an investor wants to come into a country, one of the things they look at is how much, what's the strength of the workforce. And we've seen this play out in little cases where we actually have as little as tiling in the building industry, preparing tilers from Cotonou, than just even tilers from Nigeria. And it's just those tiny things that sets the difference that we don't have. If it is a serious issue, and like you said, number of jobs in Africa yearly is roughly about 3 million. And year in, year out, we have roughly an annual between 10 to 11 million young people, making themselves available for the job market. So TVET is the one thing that I think that is designed in itself to address our unemployment challenges in Africa. And the better we begin to provide these solutions, and once we close that, it means that
the better for all of us.
Foreign investment, more disposable income and the likes,
Okay, so Ahmed, I need to ask in terms of this pathway, because we're talking about this training, this technical, vocational, and educational training, but we're not talking about where. Where is it going to be found? Because the next question has to be, how do we structure TVET to make sure that it basically does find its maximum potential? Are we looking at reworking curriculum in universities? Are we looking at focusing more on technical schools? Are we looking at having to outsource to maybe independent people such as yourselves? How do we structure it? Or is it basically across board and even governments have to get involved with setting up these kind of TVET lined institutions, or maybe just small centers around some areas? What do you think?
It's a collaboration. It cannot be done entirely by one institution. It requires the partnerships of both private, government, and non-governmental organizations to come together to addressing this issue, which is why, Jobberman itself finds itself in the area of providing solutions to young people. It would require some reviewing of the curriculum in most cases, but as at where we are yet to begin to even implement some of the curriculums that we have. I think in 2018, the federal government launched roughly about 63 centers. What are the things happening in those centers? What's the evaluation of those centers? How are we encouraging young people? There are issues like accessibility. There are issues like the current training programs. Is it exactly what the labor market is requiring? Are those centers speaking to employers of to industries within where they're located? What's the quality of the training? Finally, that I think where it works in most countries is how well they've been able to certify the skills of young people who have acquired training from those centers, such the competencies now become a required standard. And in that way, it's more valuable. And then what you then have is that, participants on those training now have some sort of lifelong training, learning skills, such that there is a requirement to go back and update, right?
Yes.
That requirement takes you back to update, and so you are not obsolete entirely. And like I said, accessibility to those training programs still remain an issue. And, those centers set up, are we speaking to business owners and employers of labor? What are the required skills for 2020?
That they need. So I want to quickly ask you about that. Ahmed, I need to sneak this in because they're telling me I have to go. But I think what you're saying in terms of the required skills for 2023 is how we need to wrap up this conversation. We've seen the job trends of the Great Resignation. We've seen more young people looking for online, stay-at-home, work-from-home jobs. In terms of the changing sort of wants of even the young employees or the young job seekers across the continent and the job trends we'll see in 2023, what role do you think TVET will play in the coming year? Just very quickly as we wrap this conversation up.
I think TVET could play an essential role in addressing socioeconomic difficulties by supporting the successful transitioning from training to work. This will involve assisting in the supply of skilled employees in a variety of, variety of sectors such as the agriculture, food processing, construction, mining, and increasing basically technical professions linked to ICT and telecoms, including manufacturing and engineering.
Yeah.
I think high quality and relevant and inclusive TVET, which involves all sectors from the third sector to the private sector, plays a critical role in just, realizing that Africa cannot reach its true potential without the right young people, right mindset, right skills to take us to that point.
All right, and we'll leave it. All right, Ahmed, we'll leave it at that. Ahmed Alaga, he is the program manager for partnerships for Jobberman Nigeria. We've looked at unlocking the potential of TVET in Africa. That's technical, vocational, and education training. Ahmed, thank you so much for joining me on this Career Hub segment. All right. And one thing that stuck with me that I also want to leave you with as we wrap things up, that means by 2030, there's going to be at least 100 million young Africans entering the labor market. Where are the jobs for them and where are the skills?